Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're looking at severe weather mostly and maybe a little bit of hurricane things. We have a few tropical disturbances going on right now. Our main look today is going to be this slight risk for June 22nd, which is today. It's 5% tornadoes, mostly wind, I would say is the main issue, and then a very small little hails. I'm not really looking at these other marginal risks for the most part just because the main feature is going to be this right here. So basically, what we got going on is more of a surface low is our main feature here. So this is our 500 millibar level, and you can see we have this flow aloft, not super strong, but it's kind of going right over our risk area, right over Iowa, right over Wisconsin, and it does have some stronger flow associated with it. You can see, 50 knots and these two little corridors, 40 plus knots associated with this entire area. This will kind of go into the overnight hours as well. If you go to the 700 millibar level, look for short waves. We can kind of see that in there. I'll get a little closer so it's a little more well defined. You can kind of see there's this trough moving its way through. The name gets a little weird with the higher up upper air atmospheres. I like to look at the rat more so for this. Same deal here. You kind of have this troughing for the most part, overcoming this whole region. Lastly, surface low is our main feature here. We have a surface low ongoing this morning, starting over here in Minnesota. It's going to move its way east, and it's pretty strong. I mean, 1004 millibars is not super strong, but you can see for the most part we have 15 knots of flow basically all over this region. So I think we bring a lot of moist air into the region. See, we already have 70s dew points in this Iowa region. I believe this is even surface based as well. Miles are showing 70 plus dew points in this region. So move forward here, it's just going to keep infecting from down here as well. Not to mention crops also help with that. It's something called corn sweat, which is when you have a lot of crops on the ground and they literally just put moisture into the air. So considering we are kind of in the middle of summer, this is going to get some of that corn sweat going on. Currently, the SPC has a 5% tornado region centered right around here in Iowa and Wisconsin. Another one right here in Michigan as well with a broad 2% kind of banana-shaped looking thing for this whole area. The 5% in Michigan to me looks a little strange. I might check that out as well. Basically, the idea of it is that Michigan is centered more over a stronger flow. You can see it right here. Um, Iowa and Wisconsin are a little bit more, they also have that strong flow, but for the most part, storms are forming earlier. You can see the cams effectively allowing models. They show convection forming pretty early on. So these, and also a lot of convection. So these storms won't be able to be discrete supercells as often. However, for the most part, this is more of a Boeing line segment kind of issue. You can see the HRRR here. I think it's a little less aggressive than the NAM NST. The NAM NST, the short range NAM, has a lot more well defined of a Boeing line segment. This would indicate much stronger wind damage for the most part. But the NAM also shows kind of more discrete mode in this early area right here in Iowa, Wisconsin. Actually, something I do want to do in future videos as well. I have a few little probability maps I drew the night before this. You can see it was 12:07 a.m., so that was a few hours ago. This is my little 5% area because that's where I thought our strongest tornado risks would be. We have a lot more discrete cells here, and for the most part, kind of this line of supercells. You can sounding here, see what this environment would look like. For the most part, I believe that our surface to 850 millibar flow is quite strong. We already have 15 knots at the surface, and it should just go up. Also, this is a sounding from Michigan I took. This is 21Z. You can see here the flow, like the atmosphere during the photograph here. That's definitely good for tornadoes. However, we don't really have much cape going on, right? Very strong flow immediately. At 700 millibars, you already have 50 knots of flow basically. That's very strong flow, and three cape is at 125. So I think the main risk here is going to be a vorticity and 3 cape boundary somewhere along in that area, maybe on a convergence band. But for the most part, it doesn't look very indicative of strong supercells or really anything that could produce tornadoes. I personally thought 2% would be good enough, but the SPC is also completely master forecasters, and I'm pretty new to this field, so I obviously take my thing with a grain of salt here. I think the SPC is brilliant forecasters. We'll see how that turns out as well. I want to look at this forecast afterward. This is my area, though. I thought that 2% would be enough, and my 5% here. And I am glad to see that, though. There's our 5% right there. Here's our sounding from ahead of that line right here. And you can see that curvature in the lower levels. It's not, you don't have as much back to flow, but for the most part, very well curved. Kind of looks like mothership supercells. Will have streamwise vorticity, which is what tornadoes like. Not to mention lots of cape here. Mean layer cape is 2200, but the surface cape is 3100. And there's not really a cap in place either, so convection will be ongoing. The issue is with all of this, especially along this line, is downdraft cape is pretty high. We have 929. I remember last night I saw values of around 1300 at one point as well. But outflows will be very strong with this. You can see here as well, kind of dry air, not super dry, but relatively dry air above the ground. So that could help to really rain cool air and kind of evaporate as it falls. You can see here as well the name's also very aggressive with that. I'll take another sounding here. I'll also go back to the wrap model. I always like soundings so they kind of show you exactly what the environment looks like. They show me what the environment looks like, and right along this cold front, actually before it as well, I think associated with that shortwave, that's where our first convection will form. And then after the fact will be that sweeping cold front. I think the wrap model actually shows the line segment right here as well, which is kind of interesting. Take a sounding out ahead of that as well. I always like sound. Here's the later show. Not as much cape, but again, so much forcing will be here because of the downdrafts. I mean, you can see your downdraft cape is still around 1,000, which is actually about equal to the cape going up. So outflow will be very strong with this, and that's why wind is our main threat. And one of my other looks as well, this is my wind probabilities right here. I put like enhanced risk. I don't, I want to show this is where our main corridor of wind damage would be. I didn't think we'd see like a true enhanced risk, but I would say if there's anywhere where our main wind damage would be right around this middle point of that Boeing line segment. And that's, that seems to be where our Boeing line will be. If you look at the HRRR, be right in that middle spot, right along that region right there. Starts here in Iowa. You have that kind of larger hail risk there as well. This is my hail probability too. That's where our main hail would be, is right in this little Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois triple point, because that's where our strong updrafts will initially form. And then those strong updrafts forming an outflow boundary ahead of it, and that's where we'll get our Boeing line summing into the night, and then probably just, stronger thunderstorms for the most part, but not really severe at that point. Yeah, those are probabilities. The SVC did not issue enhanced risk or anything. The wind damage, definitely extended into Michigan. I didn't think it would be all that much. I think Michigan's a little bit overdone. Then hail's, not too much of a factor just because of I think the storm mode isn't really showing that, because it's mostly wind damage. I think this is our last sounding. This was that line. I don't really know if this one doesn't look too good anyway. That's our main things for our severe weather. I don't think there's anything else going on in the future. I might look at this. I'll look at that as well. There's a 5%. I actually didn't see this. 5% tomorrow for day 2, which is interesting. Oh, whoops. I didn't check that one out, so I'll look at that real quick. Check model. So what's going on after, I believe, is kind of our remnants. So the trough will kind of be back here, I'm assuming. Yeah, and then there's our surface level from the night. From today, our surface level moved east. Yeah, pretty warm for this time of year, especially. I think this is also a little bit higher elevation, which should help with storms. Very good dew points in here, and I believe this is where our 5% is. It's kind of that Vermont region. So there's our higher dew points. Kind of like a kind of messy. I would think our main issue here would be convergence. Yeah. So there's also a lot of mountains here, which could lead to localized convergence too. You can see there's this kind of a convergence zone here, I believe, in Vermont. Basically always. So that could help storms kind of initiate. With HRRR, it says reflectivity wise. I'm not really sure what's going on. It looks like just a bunch of, pretty uncapped atmosphere for the most part. Cape's definitely in place. Melon's in the background fighting her toy. Cape is, pretty overspread, kind of capping issues, but I think that's just because there's going to be cloud cover and it's kind of selective where these storms will form. But do that flow aloft, and yeah, for the most part, we could see probably a supercell or 2 come out of this. I understand the 5% now. It makes sense. Like the name NST too, because I don't like to look at the same 2 or the same model for all of my looks. Yeah, kind of wind damage behind that as well. But you kind of have that discrete mode here. Around 18Z is when our storms form. Right about 1. Yeah, that's 2 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, kind of supercellular mode, kind of discrete here for a little while. There's our sounding. Lots of 3 cape, 100A2. Downdraft cape isn't too high as well. Yeah, so Nice cape overspread. I can see a little bit of a hail risk, I suppose, and more streamlined vorticity, although it does look a little more linear according to this look at the photograph, right? For the most part, most of the flow is going kind of northeasterly, a little curvature than at lower levels, but yeah, I'm very saturated as well. So I would say more of a wind damage threat personally, but if you have discrete cells here that are able to keep that right mover vector, you could definitely see that rotation going on in them. Lastly, I did say we look at the little tropical disturbances. First one is going to, oh, the first one's here near the Yucatan. I'll look at that in a second. The second one is off the coast of Florida. Probably see it right here. I don't really think anything's going on with it at the moment, though. Yeah, right there. So they had this last night as like a 40% right in this region, but it wasn't able to truly wrap itself up. There was some convection ongoing over in the Atlantic coast, but basically it's just a surface slowdown. It could lead to something interesting, maybe a few storms that could take advantage. It's very messy for the most part. Like one sounding from, I do like to see my soundings. But I think the mode isn't really there for it. I mean, you have a lot more moisture too, but for the most part, this area is always very warm and moist at this time of year, especially because of this high pressure ridge that's been picking everything up. Yeah, I know. I mean, lots of cape, so maybe some flooding risk with this, just because of, for the most part, this is a fairly saturated environment, but also these storms won't be moving very much. You can see the photograph's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, rain will just be falling right on itself. So also a lot of downdraft cape. So this is kind of interesting to see as well. Maybe a little bit of flooding risk in Florida today. So something to keep in mind. Other tropical disturbances here in the Yucatan. We can't get a good look at it. We don't have cones or anything. Sorry, I'm a little stuffy. But we have 50%. For the most part, this could go, it could not. I think it won't really affect the United States much. It might affect Mexico's more flooding risk. Giving it a better sector. That might be good enough. Look at the surface here as well. Right down there, this is very similar to the tropical storm Alberto's look. So if you remember from the last video, Alberto went from Yucatan kind of up here near the bottom of Texas and right into Mexico and kind of went this direction. This one probably won't get that high. The NAM shows that as well, but for the most part, we have a pretty strong high pressure ridge at the moment over the United States. 500 millibars shows this. Again, very well centered right over Texas, basically. So the lower pressure will be more on the west, but really it's not in the United States. This won't go very far north, I don't think. That probably won't affect the United States so much. Maybe heavy flooding here. Mexico might see some kind of heavy flooding, but these viewers don't really go from Mexico too often. So yeah, and there's that surface low associated with that depression, or this disturbance, excuse me. But for the most part, that probably will not affect the United States, I wouldn't think. You can see the convection here as well. Trying to wrap up a little bit, but it's mostly just going to go straight west. So, with that, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and hopefully we will be looking at our forecast today and see if it is affected, accurate, what we'll see with it. So I'll be checking that out later. So, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.